Well, it was a long day of testimony today. Former President Jacob Zuma also admitting to playing a role in the setting up of the Gupta-owned television channel ANN7. He said he'd been introduced to the Gupta family by the former minister in the Presidency in the Thabo Mbeki era, Dr. Essop Pahad. Pahad told the SABC this afternoon that he had nothing to say and would wait for the outcome of the commission before speaking. Earlier, you heard the former Mineral Resources Minister Ngaoko Ramatlhodi telling us here on the Full View tonight that he's challenging Zuma to repeat his claims while taking a public lie detector test. Here to discuss today's events is Dr. Alex Mashilo, the spokesperson for the South African Communist Party, of course, an alliance member of the ANC. Dr. Mashilo, good evening to you. Thank you so much for coming in tonight.
Thank you very much, Christian, to you and to the viewers at home.
There have been obviously wide-ranging claims coming today in various ways. Overall, what is your reaction to what's been said by the former president?
In the first place, it is important that we go back to the purpose for which the commission was established. The former public protector conducted an investigation and produced a report entitled The State of Capture. That investigation could not be concluded because of time limitations, but as well as limitations of resources. It was recommended that a commission be established, the basis of which in terms of reference should be to investigate the allegations contained in that report. When the former President Zuma announced the establishment of the commission following the 54th National Conference of the ANC adopting a resolution for that commission to be established, he expanded the terms of reference over and above what the former public protector has said. There cannot be any denial that actually we had a problem, and that problem accelerated in the past 9 to 10 years or so. SAA is in crisis, SABC is in crisis, Transnet was plunged into crisis, PRAZA into crisis, our Central Energy Fund into crisis, SA Express into crisis, SARS into crisis, etc. That cannot be denied. It is important that we look at the networks that plunge these key state institutions into crisis. And we believe as the SACP that there are certain appointments, because these institutions did not plunge themselves into crisis. They were plunged by appointed people who were chosen to administer, to make sure that they have been governed properly. Now, we should stay firm and look at the purpose for which the commission was established. We don't want to veer away from that. We respect the right of the former president to appear at the commission, even though he said that he didn't see any need to appear at the commission because in his assessment he was not implicated.
So are you suggesting we shouldn't get distracted? Is that what you said?
We should not be distracted, okay? There are terms of reference. When we deal with this commission, we must go to the terms of reference announced by President Jacob Zuma when he established this commission. He spoke about investigation of corruption. I mean, state capture is one of the highest form of organized crime we have seen. And you see the damage that it has caused on our state, on our capacity to implement change. It's very huge. It is going to take us a very long time. As we are speaking right here now, the SABC is looking for something like 3.2 billion rand, while its archives were conveyed to a private company, MultiChoice. And I mean, that was done in a manner that even controlled the programming, all right?
So are you suggesting then that the claim against Ngaoko Ramatlhodi is just an attempted distraction? Is that what you're saying?
Look, that commission was not established to investigate who was a spy during the Apartheid era. Those terms of reference were announced to the Republic by former President Jacob Zuma. Of course, he has a right to make whatever claims he wants to make, but he also has a right to furnish the commission with proof, with evidence to the allegations being made. In terms of the rules of the commission, if you implicate other people, they have a right to be invited and to present their side of the story. We don't want to enter into that. Ours is to focus on how can we turn around South Africa, given that key state institutions were plunged into crisis by massive amount of corruption, which we as the SACP characterized as corporate state capture.
Okay, so I do have to ask you, I mean, I take what you say about a distraction, the suggestion that you're making, But do you believe the claim against Ngaoko Ramatlhodi?
Look, the president has made the claim, the former president has made the claim. We don't want to get into that. There is a process at the commission. If you implicate someone else, the commission is required to invite that person to present their side of the story. In the first place, that is why the former president is there. But there are so many allegations of spies we have heard about in the past, etc., etc. Perhaps this is the time to bring these things to a stop, for evidence to be produced, but the terms of reference for these commissions have got to be respected.
Dr. Mashilo, in the middle of all of this, we have these situations around the ANC, right? And we understand, I mean, the ANC denies that there are divisions within its ranks. We have some people supporting former President Jacob Zuma, some people who do not appear to support him. This kind of testimony in which senior leaders are implicated, could this damage the ANC in the longer run? That would be damaging to the SACP. You move together.
Look, let's look at the broader picture. South African democracy, as we have been building it since 1994, has been plunged into crisis. It is important for all South Africans to unite and defend our democracy. And when we do so, it should not matter which political party you come from. We've got to stand up and say, let us defend our democracy. I mean, ANC leaders themselves do talk about the divisions. Everybody was observing what happened at the previous conference of the ANC. Everybody heard the former Secretary General of the ANC addressing a meeting somewhere in KwaZulu-Natal following that conference, telling those people who had gathered there that they only have 5 years to recover what had been lost, etc. We don't know what steps were taken. We don't want to enter into the ANC's internal affairs. We have a country here to turn around. To the extent that we ourselves are members of the ANC, will have to address those issues inside of the African National Congress. But this commission should help us to turn around South Africa and hold to account those who plunged key state institutions into crisis.
Dr. Mashilo, you as the South African Communist Party in 2017 condemned then President Zuma. You wanted an end to his term. You wanted him to be recalled. Has anything been said today that makes you change that view?
No, nothing makes us change that view. I mean, look at Eskom. It is in total crisis. That crisis accelerated during the past 10 years. SAA, SA Express. Really, there are serious problems. These are the problems we have to address, and we must appreciate that, at least insofar as the crisis is concerned, it can be delineated into 2 eras. Between 1996 and at least 2009, there was a formal BEE scheme where people were observing the law, etc. From 2009 coming to this side, particularly starting in 2014, corruption widened. And as a result of that corruption, which the commission has to deal with, our state is in crisis. We have an economic crisis. Almost 10 million South Africans are unemployed, and key state institutions that we need to move South Africa forward are in crisis, and they are asking for a bailout.
Dr. Alex Mashilo, the spokesperson for the South African Communist Party, thank you very much indeed for your time tonight.